Welcome back to the No Streetlights podcast, everyone. Today, we're joined by a very special guest, Dina Kaplan, founder and CEO of The Path. Now, Dina is currently a certified meditation teacher who teaches meditation and leads retreats all around the world for major companies, organizations, and people. So she's out here doing the good work to really change lives. Dina, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited to be here and excited for this conversation. Thank you.
So before we get into it, I do want to provide a very short, just kind of like a couple points about what you've done before, because this really has kind of taken my breath away.
Oh, thank you.
So Dina, before she became a meditation teacher and coach for her own company, The Path, she was an Emmy Award-winning news reporter, a tech startup COO, and she worked at the White House as director of research for the Office of the White House Counsel. That's insane. How do we not talk about that for a brief second?
Wow, you have done your research. I am impressed. Wow, nice. Thank you.
Do any of these stand out as something that you want to just touch on briefly? Even working at the White House, like that's something that a lot of people are going to be interested in.
Yeah, that was literally my first job out of college, which is a much longer story. It's actually, we could start off with a little bit of humor. It's a funny story. I was supposed to be working at MTV, which was my dream because I was really into music, and now I'm very grateful that I get to work with some of my favorite musicians and guiding meditations and helping with daily mindfulness. It's actually hard to be on tour, if you can imagine, not from your perspective as a fan or someone sitting there, but as the artist going to a different, I don't want to bemoan the life of a rock star, but you're going to a different city almost every night or a lot, and you have to do the exact same thing and remember where you are. And so, it's kind of wild that I did end up working at MTV after the White House. But it's funny that I was there on the side of covering the lives of the top musicians of the time. And now I help to bring mindfulness and meditation and calm to the same genre of person that I used to cover as a reporter. But the funny story is that, there's many funny stories around this, but to focus on it, I was supposed to work at MTV right after college. I was really excited. This was my dream. I was obsessed with pop music as a kid, still love it now as an adult. But about 2 days before my graduation from college, they said that, actually relevant to what we'll talk about in terms of not lying, they told me that I needed to say that I was getting credit for this because it was technically an internship. And I said, well, I'm graduating from college in 2 days. I can't get credit because I am not affiliated with the university at that time. And so just lie. That's what everyone does. Just forge it. And I said, as a precocious 21-year-old, I can't. I might work in the White House one day. And they thought that was funny. And they said, just forge the document. You're good. But anyway, long story short, I lost that job. So I called up some friends who I'd worked on the presidential transition for this president. And I said, is there a job at the White House by any chance? And they said, oh my gosh, someone just left yesterday. Can you start on Monday, which is the day after I was graduating? And I said, I'm in. So I went and crashed. I left graduation, sent all my stuff home with my parents, went and crashed with a friend who lived in DC at the time, and woke up the morning of Monday after my graduation, the day before, and literally went to McDonald's to blow dry my hair on one of those hand air dryers, and then asked someone, where's the White House? And they said, oh, are you going on a tour? And I said, no, I'm starting work there today, but where is it? I said, it's in Foggy Bottom that way. So anyway, that was how my professional career started.
That is insane.
Yeah, it's funny. It's kind of a funny story.
Wow. I need friends like that.
Yeah, it was very spontaneous. And I am very spontaneous. I travel full time. I lead a lot of retreats. I think I've led 16 retreats in the last calendar year. But outside of that, I have booked a lot of same day international travel. Part of my whole thing, and that we'll talk about, is life is here. it sits in front of us, and we can make of it what we want if we can get over our blocks and understand our triggers and be gentle with ourselves. And we can have fun. Even everyone listening, we can have fun with our lives. We can accept a job at the White House and start working the very next day. I mean, that's hard to do if you have a family and you have commitments. But, in theory, there's lots of fun things we can do every day. We could play 30 seconds of our favorite song and rock out and then move on with the day. So it's kind of about climbing out of the grooves of the record of our personality, or those habits that we've burrowed down into, and finding more play and fun and enjoying our lives. Why not?
Yeah, you've touched on a lot of things already that resonate really deeply with me as someone who's listened to a lot of the esoteric texts like habit energy and right speech, right action.
Yeah.
But man, life is here, living lightly. How amazing.
Yeah.
Before we get too deep into this, I want to honor our patron by kind of diving into the question that they had first, if that's all right.
Yeah, great.
So a very good friend of mine, Highland Markle, who is probably further along the path to enlightenment than I am, wanted to know, how do you even get started becoming a meditation teacher or a Dharma teacher, maybe later down the line?
Yeah. Oh, beautiful question. Thank you. Who was it that asked that?
Highland Markle, who's also a rock star if you want to check him out on Spotify.
Oh, cool. Hi, Highland. Thank you for your beautiful question. It's a beautiful thing to do. One of the things I think we'll end up talking about is getting out of this woe is me, why are all these bad things happening to me, this kind of sinking down into victimhood that I am concerned that is becoming increasingly common in our culture. So to take the exact opposite approach and think not only of how can I live in a happier, lighter way, to use your words, thank you, and how I speak a lot, but to think about how can I help others is a beautiful turn. It's a beautiful fork in the road of human existence to make. So thank you for that inclination. And certainly to start, you want to start meditating every day, which you probably do. And by the way, I just interviewed Richie Davidson from the University of Wisconsin, a very renowned researcher studying the impact of meditation on the brain and on the body. And he confirmed what I have certainly always felt and noticed, which is that the consistency of meditation is key. So if you can do even 30 seconds, if that's all you have time for every single day, that's actually better than 45 minutes one day and then nothing for the following set of days. Okay, maybe not 30 seconds, maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, but just try to be consistent about it. And then on that path, we actually have a wonderful meditation teacher training program. And actually our next class, our classes are live, they're online. So we have people from literally all over the world that join, but they are live. And our next class starts at the end of January. We usually do a few a year, but it's just 3 months. It's at thepath.com/teacher. And within 3 months, so if you take this next class by April, you'll be a certified teacher. That is a beautiful way to become a teacher. Now, what are the components of that? So definitely meditating and having a consistent practice. I think understanding at least a bit of the neuroscience behind how and why meditation impacts our lives, our brains, our bodies so profoundly is helpful. Definitely understanding at least some of the Buddhist wisdom, because you'll be asked questions about what's happening here by the people that you guide, and you'll want to have some answers to those questions. So I think knowing the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path and the Three Jewels, kind of knowing, I would say, maybe it's a cute term, but at least the basics of Buddhism, if you're teaching and guiding mindfulness, is helpful. But even more than that, I would say two things. One is that you need to be on this path of being kind. And I think that, and you and I have spoken about this before, but I think that with everything people have gone through, even in the last few years with COVID and war in the Middle East and war in Ukraine and wars all over the world, actually, with everything going on, if someone can be kind despite all of that, I think that's revolutionary. I think that's fierce. I have people come to me all the time. Dina, you would be so proud of me. Someone did, X to me and I told them off and it was so great. I was speaking up for myself. And I laugh and I say, it's really easy to be angry. Our minds kind of wire us to be victims, to borrow a phrase from my friend Heather, and our brains are wired to feel anger and difficult emotions, dukkha, in the Pali. But I think it's fierce to be kind. So I think you want to be on this path of being kind, and we'll mess up all the time. I just messed up getting ready to talk to you, but we can have grace for ourselves and understand why that happened and do better the next time. And then the second piece of that, which is, I think, related to the kindness, is to be open to forgive even some really rough things in your background. Now, I know you're thinking, well, I can't forgive X person for doing Y. I can't do that, nor would you be asking me to do that. But I actually am. Ultimately, you want to notice your anger, feel that, find your way of processing that. We can talk about that later if you want. But when you're ready, know that, as Jack Kornfield says, when you're holding on to anger, you're swallowing the poison pill. The other person doesn't even know. So I've started just thinking about any anger or frustration being picked up by a little bird from my brain and then flown away as a choice, as a freedom, because you don't want to be a Dharma teacher that's full of anger and that's not kind. So those are some of the steps.
Yeah. So I listened to the Tibetan Book of the Dead almost on repeat. That's actually how our conversation started, as I mentioned Robert Thurman. And you were like, I love Bob. He's great. And I was like, I am not going to stop emailing Dina for the rest of my life. But first, I want to talk just briefly about how that forgiveness lightens your burden.
Yeah.
There are so many allegories and metaphors, holding on to anger is like holding on to a rope, attached to a sinking ship. You're going to get rope burns. It's so much easier just to let go and then find a way to heal from that.
Yeah.
And I need to know more about this bird that comes and takes away your burdens, because that's something that I am sure is a lot of other people have a lot of difficulty with. Man. So while I ponder that, maybe we could get into not lying. I know you did a very amazing conversation about this on another show where you exchanged gifts with a man.
Oh, you watched that? Yeah, the BBC. Yeah.
Everyone talks about our research team. They definitely need a raise. So head over to our Patreon and help me and Tim out, because we are doing work out here. So please, you said you have had this kind of battle throughout your life with not lying, trying to be truthful. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, definitely. And just quickly on the anger side, which I'm happy to discuss or not, I think of two people just quickly. One is my life mentor, Eva Kaur. She was tortured by Dr. Mengele and the doctors at Auschwitz as part of the twins experiments. And she came back she and her sister were two of the very few twins that survived those experiments at Auschwitz. So she went back for the 50th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. And one of the doctors that had been injecting her and her sister with poison constantly went in front of all these cameras, Dateline and all these cameras from around the world, and apologized. And then he kind of was saying, what can you do for me? And she said, the only power that I have is the power to forgive you. You've ruined 50 years of my life. I won't allow you to ruin one more day. And she was the most happy, giddy, ready to dance at a moment's notice person that I have ever been around in my life. And so talk about someone that's hard to forgive. She did that. And then I think quickly of my co-teacher on our meditation teacher training program, Leon Ford. Leon is from my hometown of Pittsburgh, and he's Black, and he was sitting at a traffic light once on his way to his grandmother's house for rib dinner on Sunday night. And there was a mistaken identity situation with a few white police officers. And long story short, one of them went around to the passenger side of his car while he's literally at a stoplight, thought he was someone that he wasn't, who he kept saying that he wasn't, and shot him 5 times, paralyzed him for life. He lost both of his legs. He'll be in a wheelchair the rest of his life. And he has chosen to forgive that police officer to the extent that that officer is now the godfather of Leon's child. Yeah, like it is. He has really forgiven that officer. And Leon was asked during our teacher training program, we watched a short film about Leon and his life. And so we were live after people had watched that film. And one of the students in the class said, why did you forgive him? I can't even wrap my head around that. And Leon paused, and live, he said, without having thought about this before, he said, I choose happiness over pain. So it's a choice. Okay, so we can circle back on that if you want. The no lying thing, I don't know if I'd call that a battle. I think that might have been a jigsaw puzzle that I had to piece together. A delight, I would actually say. So I started this when I went on my first Vipassana retreat. Which is a funny story unto itself, because I met kind of a cute guy. I was single at the time, walking off a plane in India. My first time not in India for a layover. So my first real time in India. And this guy said, hey, what are you doing here? And I said, I don't really know. And he said, do you want to go on a retreat? And I said, sure. So I'm kind of picturing the 4 seasons in Bali, and he ends up taking me on a 12-day silent, gender segregated Goenka Vipassana retreat. It's like the worst date of all time. And no soap, no toilet paper. It was a mess. The conditions were really rough. But when we walked in, they made us take a bunch of vows, and one of them was a no lying vow. And I thought, well, I'm going into 12 days of silence. That shouldn't be hard. And then on the last day of the retreat, as we were getting ready to integrate back into normal society, the assistant teacher said, so those vows that you took before you came here, they now apply to the rest of your life. Okay, goodbye, good luck. So I've always been very literal. My parents called me literal Dina when I was 5 years old. Just had my birthday yesterday, so woohoo. And so I decided to try doing this. I don't know if I'd say it was a battle in the sense of, getting the troops ready and having it not be fun. I thought this would be kind of a fun mindfulness experiment. I wrote about this in an article called 2 Years to No Lies, because it took me 2 years to figure out how to live in modern society without lying. I started watching the words that came out of my mouth like a magician would watch a scarf come out during a trick. And it was very difficult to hear how many lies I would say about really stupid things. Like, how many times have you been to London? I read about this in the article. I might say 50 times when in fact I've only been 30 times, and nobody cares. And people are not even listening probably to the answers to half the questions that you're saying. But I finally was able to watch the lies. And then it took about a year to just start abating them slowly. And I think I'm there. I'm mostly there. I have 1 or 2 lies I do every year. I go to Europe a lot because I grew up partly in Rome and have a little bit of a Italy travel addiction issue we can discuss on the next podcast. But so when I come back, I seem to always have like an apple or a banana or something. And they always ask, what agriculture? Are you bringing in any agriculture from Europe when you land in the US? And I think, gosh, do I want to talk to customs about this or throw it out? No, I really want to eat my apple. So there might be that one lie. Now customs is going to be after me. But other than that, I try to be honest all the time. And it's hard. You can be clever. So I might be clever, but I try to never lie. And what the hardest thing about that is realizing that people are lying to me constantly. And I just have to know that they're just living by different ethics than I am.
I'm sure that you recognize this all the time, but each of us is doing our best. And in order to honor our path, we have to honor their path. And if that's the best they can do is to make up something to avoid potentially whatever they are constructing in their reality, extending grace and love, I mean, is one of the best gifts we can give.
Okay, you might be further along than I am on that. No, you're right about...
Certainly not.
You're right about that. I think the thing that is hard for me, if I'm honest, is that, for example, for my team that works for me and they'll say, you know, this is going to be done by this time, and then it's not, that one could argue, I would put that into the lying category. So I guess then have to kind of wrestle to the ground, as Leon did in a much more extreme situation. With that police officer, at the moment that they said that, they intended that, but then something came up. But ultimately, and this gets to the right speech and right action, ultimately where we want to get to, and I'm not perfect on this, but I am quite good on this, is aligning our words and our actions so that our thoughts, I mean, this goes on the Eightfold Path, putting us right along it. Right thinking, right speech, right action. If we can align that, we're in alignment. And this is actually what Goenka, the wonderful teacher who led that Vipassana retreat that I went on, and many other people have been on these Vipassanas around the world. This is what he's talking about when he talks about eliminating the sankharas, the mental formations, which you can think of as kind of like a knot of yarn that's kind of tightly wound in your head, and they're woven throughout the body. Goenka talks about when we align our words and our actions, we start to smooth out those sankharas. And that's when these just incredible serendipities start happening in our lives. We start to be able to manifest things that feel a little bit beyond what humans should be able to manifest. And you start to live in this kind of magical way. I definitely have this. It's weird. Anyone that spends a lot of time with me, I don't know whether the word is frustrating or magical, but they definitely notice it. Like, we'll talk about maybe internally on my team, someone that we want to invite to a retreat that we're hosting, and I will run into this person 1 hour later, even if I'm not in the city that I normally live in and they're not either. Things like that happen literally every single day, often multiple times a day. So there's something beautiful. Also, it's a way to fall more in love with yourself. It's a way to not feel fear when you walk into a cocktail party. It's a way to build your confidence with yourself, to know, with all else that might crash and burn in my life, at least I'm being honest, and I'm aligning my words with my actions. I think it's a beautiful way to live.
That is incredible. The way I used to view this was, I'm a gamer. Sorry.
Oh, I know, that's fun.
But I always think of the time before this life that we had like a character creation screen. Ooh. And I see people who are living the way you were living as like, during character creation, you were like, just put all my points in luck. If I put all my points in luck, everything else is going to shake out fine. I often feel a little bit of jealousy there because I did not put any points in luck. I was like, I'm going to do the perfect build and everything will be fine. What would I need luck for? Turns out you need luck for life.
Well, that's so funny. You're going to laugh. One of my clients who I guide for is a professional poker player. So I told him, he's in Boston. So I told him, when I'm in Boston next, I want you to teach me how to play. So I was in Boston about a month and a half ago for my high school reunion. And I said, oh my gosh, let's do it. Can you teach me to play poker? And he said, yeah. So on my way to this beautiful Encore casino in Boston, I texted him to say, by the way, I don't want you to get frustrated. I'm going to end up with really good cards, and it's going to be weird. And I don't want you to get angry about that because he was going to play too at the high stakes table and I was going to play at the low stakes table. And he said, no, I want you to get good cards. I want you to do well. And I said, no, but this is real. So if I get really good cards, I don't want you to, feel badly about that. So he said, no, I'm going to be happy for you. So he leaves his high stakes table, goes to the low stakes table. I know nothing. I don't even know what a flush is. I don't even know what a good hand looks like. I actually got a flush and didn't know it. And he's not allowed to talk to me during the game, even though he can see my cards. So I didn't bet on it. I mean, I literally knew nothing, but he started teaching me slowly. And I kept thinking, thank you, whatever, angels, forces out there for the good cards you're sending me. And lo and behold, it took about an hour. But after an hour, I started getting double aces and multiple hands. I mean, I was getting absolutely impossible cards. And I did super well, actually. Woohoo! I made real money on my first time playing ever, which he said is very, very unusual. But yeah, there's something to this. I don't believe necessarily in magic per se. I just think there's a science that scientists can't quite explain yet, but someday they will be able to. So how's that for luck?
That is phenomenal. And I think our good friend who we've had on the show a couple times now, Ryan Higginson, would talk about how it's not what goes around comes around. It's what comes around goes around. I think basically whatever we generate within us, it has no option but to come back.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're, always living in gratitude and appreciation, then of course things are going to come to you to be grateful for. So I want to apologize really quick to our audience. We have kind of a hard stop today. We've been working for literally months now to make this collaboration happen. And we believe that it's happening at the right time. But instead of diving too deeply into luck and fun, I think we should probably nail down this fierce compassion and agency concept that you've talked about a couple times.
Yeah.
How is being kind and taking back our power going to lead our society away from this addiction to victimhood?
My gosh, thank you so much for asking about this. So I believe in this so deeply, and so far I've only shared it within our teacher training program, so within a very closed audience. By the way, to what you were saying before, just quickly, karma is a real concept. It's not just a Taylor Swift song.
It's a Taylor Swift song?
Yeah, karma, not just about, she changes the lyrics now to reference her current boyfriend. But karma is a real concept in Buddhism, and we talk about planting the seeds with, kindness can be one of them. It's not exactly the word that the Buddha would use, but with right action, with right speech, we're planting positive seeds that will lead to positive outcomes. You can also do the opposite, plant negative seeds with gossip and idle chatter and things like that lead to negative outcomes. But yeah, it's a real concept. So this victimhood thing, which is very pervasive, especially in the Western world right now, I put into the not helpful category. And it's funny, it came up my last teacher training class that just ended the Sunday before last. In the very first class in September, I don't remember who it was, but someone was talking about, it's really hard for me in my life because of XYZ. It was a little bit of a victim calling out. And I wasn't doing this per se mindfully, like, let me call her on this and make this a sub theme of the class. But I did say, I want to stop that line of thinking right now. And I want to invite you all. In fact, let's make this a sub theme of the entire class, to not allow yourself to wallow in, I can't be successful or happy or achieve whatever goal it is you want to achieve because of XYZ. What we want to get to is a place of finding full agency. So in Buddhism, to keep us on the Eightfold Path, we need to accept what is. Because by the way, what is. We can't change the present moment. That just is with
Om Mani Padme Hum.
Oh yeah, with the italicized is if we were writing this. We accept what is, and then we think about, given what is, what is my right action here? So by the way, if you're an advocate for whatever issue is important to you, this doesn't mean don't advocate. This actually means do advocate, but accept what is, and then always think about what is my right action. And always, I have another client who I guide in meditation, literally every day, every day, even holidays. And this client makes fun of me for saying, oh, should I feel agency, Dina? Because apparently I say this all the time. We have to put ourselves into a position of agency where we have choice and we have freedom. Ultimately, the whole Buddhist path is about finding freedom, living with dexterity, having mental agility, just like, we can work on physical agility as I did this morning at the gym and during yoga. So if we come into this place of living where every moment is, and we always have freedom to take our next right action, we put ourselves into a position of power, which is way more fun. And it's a far more free way of living. So I did end up making this the sub theme of our entire teacher training course. And my father is this very well-known Harvard Business School professor. And he always says, you can't please all the people all the time. But we had 29 people in that class, and 29 people told me that their entire life changed in the program. Yeah, yes, they learned how to guide meditations. Yes, they learned Buddhist wisdom, but their entire life changed. And I think a lot of it was the two sub-themes that I introduced in the class. One was about kindness being fierce and always a choice. And the other is about getting out of victimhood and putting yourself into a position of power and agency always. You can always think, where's my freedom here? Now, I know we got boxed in on things, but can we find even a sliver of freedom? And by the way, within that freedom is the chance to hit back at someone. Someone strikes you with mean, you can be kind if that is the right thing to do. The Buddha said to always balance wisdom, panna, with equanimity. Back up. Or wisdom and kindness, or wisdom and compassion, let's just say. So you say metta and wisdom. So when it's the right thing to do, we can be kind. And when it's the right thing to do, we can not be kind, but to find some freedom there, some agency.
My God, there's so many things I need to touch on here. So the first thing that really rung out in my mind during this most recent one, because if I talked about how I feel about everything you said, it would be another 2 hours. Talking about power in the situation. I think it is incredibly powerful and can be liberating to a lot of people to realize that they are in control no matter the situation.
Yes.
With a small caveat, you're in control of yourself.
Yeah.
And, Bob talks about in his narration of the Tibetan Book of the Dead that it is so vitally important. He's talking about teachers mentioning that the hell realms and the Praeton realms are sometimes classified as states of mind. He's like, yeah, but all of reality is in the mind, so you can't just selectively apply that. One thing that I try and teach people is to be kind to themselves, and really, if you're in your head all the time, make it a nice place to be. No matter the situation, you're in control of yourself because the self is the only reality. So no matter what's going on, who's being unkind, you're in a tight spot, you can still, talking about metta, find a way to be a friend to yourself.
Yeah.
You can still be kind. You don't have to hate yourself and beat yourself up. Plenty of people are going to try and do that. You don't need to be one of them.
Well, let me just add one thing. As Sharon Salzberg, an extraordinary author and teacher of Buddhism, says often when she's guiding meditations, every moment is a chance to start again. So I was in this situation today, getting ready to talk to you, and I'm at a hotel and I wanted it to be clean. So they're not, dirty bottles behind me, but the housekeeper, who did not speak any English, and I speak a bunch of languages, but not Spanish, was just taking so long. And I'm trying to think how to be kind and yet make sure my room was ready to be on time for our interview. And I wasn't terrible, but I wasn't the best. And rather than wallowing in that, it's coming back to the bar, being in my head about it, as you said. I have this new thing, kind of, now you'll have my bird flying away metaphor. My other new thing is, in a moment of, that's not quite a crisis, but in a moment of consternation, let's say light consternation, just bring, I don't know where that came from, but just bring all my attention into my feet. Feel my feet in my shoes. I was actually wearing slippers, so feel my feet in the slippers on the ground. What does the ground feel like? It's wood. Okay, let me feel that wood. Just bring my attention there and just make this choice to let it all go. I'm here. The present moment actually brings a lot of freedom with it. What's my right action? I'm just going to get in this room, prop up the computer and just start with fresh energy, letting everything go, and just be gracious with myself. It's easy to be kind, or it can be easier to be kind to other people, but may we treat ourselves with grace and know that we can always start again. Every moment is a chance to begin again.
Absolutely. So what that brought up in me is, I think all faiths are trying to convey the same concept. So I often will mix Buddhism and Christianity, or, those are the two I'm most familiar with, but most faiths have incredible overlap and exchange. So I'm trying to get there. It's said that if Buddha was placed on an alien world, his instinctual reaction would be figuring things out, curiosity. And in Christian texts, oftentimes what empowers a lot of people is asking the Lord to stand up in them, to really guide them down the path of right action. So I love that you said being mindful in the moment. You can have the Buddha stand up in you and say, what is my right action here?
Yeah.
If I am dismayed, how would I want this to be? What is the best way for us together to get to yes? Because you did talk about focusing on the solution earlier when you were talking about your meditations and stuff. I think that's an incredibly powerful thing that's going to help a lot of people through this episode, is realizing that every single moment you can go back to your faith, whether that's faith in yourself, faith in humanity, faith in a higher power, or in a path, and allow the solution to come to you by being present in the now instead of holding on to these habit energies and the things you were taught.
Nice. Yeah, there's specific language about this in Buddhism. It's about taking refuge in the three jewels. And so taking refuge, what does that mean? That might make sense to you, or that might feel very lofty and not something you can understand. So refuge is really a home. You might think about going hiking in the Dolomites or in the Alps or something, and there's a little hut, a wooden hut. So you can take refuge in three things. One is the Buddha, which is really any teacher, could even be yourself if you are a teacher to yourself. So the Buddha, the Dharma, which is the Buddhist wisdom that we're talking about here. So that's what I did. Refuge in the Dharma. Okay, what is my right action? Let it all go and just get ready. So the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, which is, the Buddha would say, the most important one, because without Sangha, there's nothing. And Sangha is your mindful community. That's like you and I are in mindful community now with your listeners and watchers as well. That is one of the things that I love about our teacher training program, is that it's live. Like I said, it's online, but it's live. We're all in mindful Sangha together. And it is friggin' inspiring as all heck to be in a group of people who are all wired imperfectly, as humans all are, but all trying to do their best. So I really encourage everyone that's listening or watching to this to find some mindful Sangha around you. It doesn't have to be in person. It can be online, but have a group of like-minded people that are supporting you and inspiring you, because the Buddha literally said you cannot be on this path on your own. So I think it's a wonderful beacon to hold to. And it's similar to what you're saying. So it's this idea of taking refuge.
The way that I envision taking refuge is directly correlated to Sangha, because whenever I hear that word, I think of really being held.
Yeah.
Like I feel that whenever I am kind of constructing this in my mind palace, I feel just like, man, I'm going through all this stuff. And then someone comes in, holds me, loves me, accepts me. And that brings peace, which then would allow me to do whatever the right next move is.
Nice. Yeah. Held by Sangha. I love that. It's so important. And we obviously have this epidemic of loneliness now. So those of us on our paths, it can feel lonely. It always happens in our teacher training program, usually about 2 or 3 weeks in, someone will start crying or have a very emotional response when we talk about Sangha, and realize that their friends that might be hard partiers or hard whatever, XYZ that doesn't align with their Buddhist path are not quite the people they want to be around. And that's hard. I think there's so many positives to being on this path, but that's one of the elements of going on your path that is challenging or can be challenging.
Absolutely.
If you're not living at an ashram.
Which few of us have that opportunity in this moment, but you can be your own ashram. You can create your sanctuary, as you should.
I love that. That's beautiful.
Thank you. As we close here, I want to just bring up one gripe I have to get this off my chest, to let go of the rope. Dharma, whether it is the Buddhist wisdom, the Christian wisdom, the Hindu wisdom, whatever your Dharma is, that is an instruction manual. And instructions mean action. So if you have, like me, listened to the Tibetan Book of the Dead and the Dhammapada and all of the other texts 100,000 times, if you're not doing any of that, it's worthless. If you identify as a Christian and you're not doing the things that are in the daggone book, you're wasting your time. So whatever your Dharma is, please understand that is an instruction manual, and instruction means action.
Woo! That's so funny. When I was leading my first startup in the web video world, which is what brought me to mindfulness in the first place, I used to walk around the office all the time saying, I'm all about action. And I love that. I was on a flight recently from Rome, and I was running a little bit late, and there was a woman who was one person in front of me to check in. And I had that 1 minute where you have to check your bags or they're going to close the flight. And she was wearing a big cross. And I said, I'm so sorry to do this. I had so much traffic getting here. Is there any way, like, what time is your flight? Is there any way I can go ahead of you? And her flight was hours and hours and hours after mine. And she said, no, you should have gotten here earlier. And I just thought, you're wearing the big cross, and I get it, and we're all imperfect and we're imperfectly wired, but I'm with you. May we live it, and we can choose to not be kind, but that's planting its own seeds of karma. So may we choose kindness when we're able to and when it serves us.
Amen. So we're at our hard stop time. I want to respect you as much as I can here. So thank you, Dina.
Oh my gosh. Thank you.
With your birthday having just elapsed, I think that you are an amazing gift to us.
Thank you. Thank you. This has been so amazing. I love this. The No Street Lights podcast is amazing. You are amazing. It's been an honor and a privilege. And thank you for this beautiful conversation.
And thank you for accepting me into your Sangha, allowing me to feel that warmth and that love, and hopefully to get some wisdom out of this.
Amazing. And everyone is welcome. If anyone has questions, you can email me, Dina, Dina, @thepath.com, or sit, SIT, @thepath.com, and would love to welcome and support everyone in your Sangha and your community. And thank you so much. I'm so glad to be in Sangha with you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And what a beautiful segue. If you want to join our community, we have Patreon, we have Discord, we have Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Tim, what am I forgetting? Brittany, if you want to edit in anything I'm forgetting, I love you. And thank you all for coming as far as we can down this path today. Dina, we can't wait to have you again.
Thank you.
Really quick shout out to Eric Spears, Ketria Hauser. God, I hope I'm saying that right. I'm so sorry if I'm not, Ketria. I love you. And of course, Highland Markle, who started this discussion with how in the world do I start guiding meditations and become a Dharma teacher?
Love that. Oh yeah. And also, by the way, I'm on Instagram and pretty active at Dina Kaplan, DinaKaplan, or on TikTok at Meditation Dina.
Perfect. Thank you so much. We'll make all those links happen, and we'll talk to you soon.
No street lights, but we're finding our way. In the dark, but we've got something to say.